Here, you can exercise your rights to freedom every day without leaving your home. We don't just say, we do. It's the Stain City way.
With the festive season around the corner, everyone is making plans to spend it with their loved ones. But there are many out there who have gone through a rough 2017, or a number of years actually leading up to this one, and have gone through breakups, divorce, and even had to bury their significant others. Whether it's a loss of a partner through death or they're still alive, and you need to learn to now coexist. Endings in relationships in general are complex journeys tangled with all sorts of emotion. Hard as it is to move on, there's no right or wrong way to do it. We all know there comes a time when it is not only necessary but healthy to move on. Today's show is all about relationships, when and how it is advisable to pick up the pieces. Please welcome our resident relationship coach, Kofi Ofori-Boateng, and founder of Life Counsel, Gerry Pretorius. Welcome, fellas.
Hello.
I always like it when guys talk about relationships because it always feels like it's us as girls who get together and we drink wine and we eat ice cream, and then like hours later we're in circles repeating the same things. So when guys come, I'm like, there we go. Because then all the ladies are like, let's listen to them. What do they want? Okay, we're here to talk breakups, right?
Yeah.
And I saw you nodding when you were saying when it's advisable to move on, right? And what you once said to me was, the thing about breakups is people don't go through them, right? They just go past it.
Yeah.
Why is it important to go through a breakup?
It's almost like, when you've, say, written an exam, for example, and you want to review the work, or you've been for a job interview and you want feedback. You need to take that time out to find out exactly what you did right, what you did wrong, and not necessarily within the context of how you treated the other person, but also how you treated yourself. What did you compromise? What did you give up that you shouldn't have given up? Things like that. Just like take a moment, reflect on the good, the bad, and brace yourself for what's still to come. Because a lot of the time, not doing that and rushing into the next relationship really puts you at a bit of a disadvantage. It doesn't help.
But I mean, Gerry, is there a chance, a possibility that you're not dealing with it, even though you're not rushing into the next relationship? Your next relationship could be in 3 years' time. Because we all get this feeling, when people say time heals all wounds, no, going through the pain heals all wounds, not time, right? So there is a possibility that you could think that because you've given yourself space between relationships, but you haven't done any healing.
My take is that time does heal, but I think it goes both sides. Time does heal, but you need to process it as well. And that is why we provide a safe space for couples or for individuals that go through a divorce or they've lost a child, a spouse, a loved one. We provide a safe space for them to communicate their emotions, what they've been through. So obviously, yes, you think that maybe time heals. 3 years later on, you might not have dealt with it. So it is important, of very importance, that you actually deal with it, talk about it, relate with your emotions, your thinking, process it, because it does take time, but it does take a professional sometimes just to talk to somebody, to relate your emotions. Because doing it yourself, some people can do it themselves, but at times they don't. Most people can't or are not able to process trauma or grief, the process.
So there's like a bit of I don't know if it's a misconception, and you'll put it into place for me, is that if you date someone for 3 or 4 months and you break up, right? And then you're like mourning it. And then, you want to equate it to somebody who's been dating someone for 8 years and they break up and they're like, it was only 3 months, you're fine, you'll get over it. Me, it was 8 years. Are we allowed to compare those breakups?
No, not really, because everyone's different. Every relationship is different.
Yeah.
So you know exactly what you put into that relationship in that time that you were with that person. For example, someone who may have been going through an infatuation may take it a whole lot harder than someone who is actually in a committed relationship. It wouldn't make sense but that's what they felt that they gave during that 3-month period. And then on the other hand, you have someone who's been maybe in a marriage, who is almost checked out of the marriage during the marriage. So by the time he breaks up, it's a lot smoother process.
Yeah,
It's a much smoother process for him.
Obviously, because 3 months is honeymoon phase, so
Yes.
all you're remembering are good times.
You get what I'm saying?
Right?
So-
Whereas 8 years, you've gone through the entire...
Through everything.
And you possibly have checked out in your mind a few times before actually
yes.
checking out.
Yeah.
Harry, what's the hardest question you would pose to someone who's going through grief, right? Like, because you have to ask yourself some tough questions when you are, going through a breakup and all of that, or separation, all of that. There's hard questions to be asked. What's the first one you pose to a couple, to a person?
I think the first thing is obviously when they go through a divorce or through a death or those kind of things, it is a shock to their system. It is a shock. They are in disbelief phase. But the questions they need to ask themselves, they need to accept it. To some point of time, processing and accepting that I am actually going through the divorce. I need to move on with my life. So ask yourself those questions. Do I accept it? Can I accept it? Is an important question to ask, first of all. And do I process this am I processing this trauma, the grief, in a healthy way? Those are important questions to ask and to reflect. And that's where we provide that platform where we ask the questions, or we let the individual or the counselee talk about what they've been going through.
Do men and women deal with grief differently?
To a certain degree, they do, yeah. Women are more emotional. Men tend to suppress more emotions. They suppress it, put it down, don't talk about it, I'm going to be fine. Where women, they would be more emotional, cry about it, talk about it, much easier. Women are much more intelligent emotion to a certain degree than men are at times.
We know that. Is there a healthy time period for grieving a relationship?
Well,
could you run into me 5 years later and I'm still like, well, when John left?
Well, I don't like to place limits, time limits, or schedules on people's grief. Everyone feels differently. They know what they're mourning. They know what that loss has cost them. So I don't really like to put any timelines on it. However, if your grief and your grieving is costing you in terms of your everyday life, then
your forward momentum,
your progress in life, then there's an issue. You may need to go back and start reworking through the process, perhaps a little more aggressively, to try and move past it.
Harry, so there's a difference in how men and women deal with it. Do you find there's a difference in the different cultures?
Yes, there's cultures and there's the way people grieve. There's ceremonies people conduct after. There's differences in how people they would celebrate, or they will celebrate, or they would mourn for certain days or weeks after the incident. They would not do certain activities. There are differences. And that is, you need to take that in consideration when you have a person sitting in front of you doing, facilitating the process, that this person is unique from their background, their circumstances, and you need to take that in consideration, and you let them talk about their experiences, where they come from, their religion, their culture, wherever they're coming from. It does make a difference.
You said something I think everyone needs to hear, because sooner or later in our lives we'll all go through a breakup, and that your breakup is unique, right?
Of course,
I find that when we're counseling each other and friends and even yourself through a breakup, you want to equate yourself to somebody else, but this person started dating this quickly, this person did that, this person did that. There's none of that. You need to deal with yourself in your own pace. This episode is going to be riveting. If you need advice on how to move on after a breakup or a divorce, send us a short voice note or a tweet. Harry will be back later after the break. We discuss how and where to find love again. Do not go anywhere. Welcome back. Before the break, we talked about the stages one will go through after the end of a relationship. As human beings, it's in our nature to seek and give love. But often the question, where do I start, is overwhelming. Joining Kofi and I is Makabelo Mutaung, who's a social and dating coach. So they're not only in the movies. A personal trainer for those looking for love. She helps people create social lifestyles, gain confidence, and find some success with their daily and romantic endeavors. We welcome Makabelo. I thought it was just on Hitch.
You just made me sound so delicious.
Girl, but you are, okay? Here's the thing about dating coaches, all right? People always want to know, what's your dating life looking like?
Excellent.
Okay. So
Excellent within limits, of course.
What's within limits?
I'm human.
So-
Within a healthy balance. I have my breakups, I have my makeups, I have my...
Good. So you're not like, presenting a perfect picture because when those
It's excellent in a sense that whatever relationship status I find myself in, I make sure that I'm happy.
Okay.
Be it single, be it in a relationship, be it engaged, be it...
Wherever you are happy. I like that. So one of the tweets coming through, hashtag Real Talk with Anele, if you're going to send through some questions, is, after a breakup, there's always that, I gave so much of myself, I did this and I did this and I did that. But shouldn't you be giving of yourself in a relationship anyway?
You should be. I mean, relationships are about a compromise, right? There's certain things that when we come together, we don't always agree on. And it's only natural that you let go of certain things and find a new way of just gelling together. But obviously with the breakup, then you have to learn to go back to yourself and say, okay, what is it that I used to like before this person and so forth. I think it's part of relationships to compromise. We find our identity there, a new identity. You find your identity when you're alone. It's part of life.
Do you find we hard on ourselves in a breakup? So because a breakup in itself is something that is sad, that is why you go and you lambaste yourself about, what you did for this person and how you feel you've given your life up and you've changed this way. Whereas those are natural processes of a relationship where, yes, it's good to you must keep your individuality and you must keep doing things that you like, but it's natural to kind of morph into each other.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily morph into each other, but to
Yeah,
serve
I know,
each
that
other.
sounded like very crazy.
But to serve each other. And it's funny because I actually did a video on this not too long ago, and I was talking about the fact that when you enter into a relationship, the relationship is one thing, love is something else. So if you're loving this person and it's coming from a place of love, love gives, but love also receives. And as you give, you're supposed to do so without any real expectation of recompense or reciprocation.
Yes.
In the relationship, on the other hand, this is a transactional kind of situation. So now, if the relationship isn't working, it means either there isn't a two-way transaction, and that needs to be worked on, but ultimately you are supposed to give, regardless. And even if the person's not giving back to you in the way that you would have liked to have had them give back to you, they're still giving you something. It could be feedback. Take that feedback and use it as an opportunity to grow yourself, to better yourself, because ultimately that's what that's all about.
I'm stuck on love gives, but love receives. Because people miss that part, the receiving part. So how do you get people to be match fit to be dating, if that makes sense?
Wow, you mean how do I make people?
Yeah, because before, let's say I come to you, right? If you can see that I'm not ready to be dating, are you going to put me into the dating sphere or are you going to panel beat me a little bit first? Obviously, you're not a psychologist, but there's certain times when you're like, I need to be happy, get me a person. You know what I'm saying?
Sometimes you have to let people be hurt because it's good for them. Where they think they are and where they actually are two different things. So sometimes you have to let them be burnt so that they know and can come back and say, okay, no, where did I go wrong? Just let them be sometimes if they don't get it. But you always try and advise that, you're not ready, you just got out of a relationship. What's your goal with your next relationship? Because you're going to keep on messing the other relationships and messing yourself in the process. But sometimes if you feel some people can't handle loneliness, that's why we've got people doing substance abuse. And apparently there's now a survey that was done where they can link loneliness to the crimes that are done. So they find that the lonelier people are, the more they get into criminal activities, the more they get into substance abuse and so forth. So some people can't deal with it and they just become something else, and you let them be. You let that be their meantime. They just...
But when you say sometimes it's good for people to get hurt, and to go there and burn and then come back, so you know that this person is not ready for a relationship, but they're adults, I know, but you say go ahead and date.
Go ahead and date and check the type of people that you're sending them to. So I'll send somebody who is mentally stable, who's matured to match up with this person, where they can actually see that, oh, wow, I'm not ready because this person is already ready for a relationship and I'm not.
Yeah.
But if you're sending them to the same person who's in the same state, they won't recognize that there's chaos there, and you know, they'll feed off on each other. You know?
I'm back with you. We have got a voice note.
Hello, Anele. I'm going through a breakup. My boyfriend just told me that he made someone pregnant. So I think I'm still in denial. So I just want to ask, how can I get through this? Because it's hurting me. It's painful.
Kofi.
Well, I'm not sure if I fully understand what she's asking there. Does she want to break up with the gentleman, or does she want to?
She wants to get through it.
Well, she wants to get through it. She's in denial in the sense that she can't believe that, you know, this person has made another person pregnant. I suppose the denial will end when there's actually a baby out there, because it's still up in the sky and in the mountains when someone else is pregnant.
Yes.
But once the baby is there and they require attention and love and money, you know, I think she's trying to process her feelings before she has to deal with that, and, you know, therefore get to the fork. Do I break up or do I stay?
That's exactly what you said. She needs to process her feelings and find out exactly how she feels about this whole situation, how she feels about him, how she feels about the other woman, about the child. Her reality is changing, it's shifting. And at the same time, it's like what I talked about earlier about feedback. This is a growth opportunity. The question is, what direction is she going to grow in? So she's getting feedback about the relationship, the reality of the relationship versus the fantasy or the reality that he may have presented. And she's going to have to sort of like move with it. With that being said, there's also, I think a lot of the time there's a tendency to begazela.
Be strong, yeah?
Be strong and
build your household, lady. Build your household. Support your man through this time.
Exactly. And depending on whether they're married or not, that's something else to consider.
She said boyfriend.
Boyfriend, okay, fine. So like if it's a boyfriend, that already gives you an indication. You get what I'm saying? Like there's no real commitment yet. So is this someone that you want to tie yourself down to going forward, or is that are you going to look at this as a warning sign of what could potentially be in store in the future?
Okay. I am dying to know what you have to say, but I also have to take an ad break. So that face is going to give you the answer after the break. Do not hesitate to send even more voice notes to us, messages, tweets, Facebook. Kofi, Kheri, and Makabelo might just give you the advice that you've been needing to hear, all right? We have to take a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Real Talk with me, Anele. So no relationship is perfect. And although we strive to have it that way, there will always be little hiccups. If only relationships came with a manual, right? But don't worry, my guests, pretty much manuals. Relationship coaches Kofi Ofori-Boateng as well as Makabelo Mutawung are here for you. Before the break, we got a WhatsApp voice note from a lady who was saying that her boyfriend had impregnated another lady and she's in denial and she's trying finding two ways to process it. Is she staying? Is she leaving? Basically, Kofi said she needs to know that her reality is changing. That was the main thing he said. And also he's a boyfriend, so she needs to see if this is not a warning sign. What is he saying to her about the level of commitment that he has for her? These are all her decisions. Makabelo, you were going to give us your take on this.
I was making the face.
Yes, you were, girl.
So I'm of a slightly different opinion, but I agree with what he's saying in terms of we don't know how long this lady has been in a relationship for. So the mistake we make as people is that we tend to intensify titles more than we intensify the relationships themselves. For example, we would have taken her more seriously had she said she's married versus that it's a boyfriend. But they've been together for 15 years, they've been married 2 years. How do we weigh this thing? Do we weigh it according to titles? Do we weigh it according to durations, to the experience? Like, how do we do it? You know, some people have gone on to be boyfriends and girlfriends for 30 years. Is it our business to say it's less valuable because it's a boyfriend.
There's
Do you
no
understand?
legal
But I understand where
documents.
she is now. She did say that she's in denial. That's a stage number one of any breakup, is that you go through the denial, and then the next stage is acceptance, and then the next is moving on and so forth. You know, so she'll get through this phase. It's just a phase. It will pass. Then reality will hit, and now she'll be faced with making decisions for herself. Like, do I move on? What do I do? You know, and then next stage again. You know.
So, I mean, for me personally, I've always like said to myself, if that had to happen to me, I'd have to sit down and ask myself, what about the situation hurts? Is it the fact that he was dating someone else? Is it the fact that he was sleeping with somebody else? Is it the fact that he was sleeping with somebody else without any protection? Because, I mean, now there's a child. Is that the right way to go about it, or am I just like jesting at like wounds that I shouldn't be touching?
Well, we all process differently. So if those are the main things that come to your mind, then by all means start with those. But the main thing, the bottom line is you're actually dealing with it. You're processing it. So she's saying she's in denial, all right? It doesn't sound to me like she's in denial, first of all. She's calling in to talk about this.
To engage.
And to engage. So she's not in denial about this. She's hurt by this, and she's trying to find a way to move forward. So that's a powerful step in of itself. The next thing now is basically, like you're saying, do you want to stay with this guy, or don't you want to stay with this guy? Even if you don't want to deal with it necessarily right now, is this the kind of situation you want to be in? You get what I'm saying? Because we can't, you're right, whether married or unmarried, there was a commitment given, and you need to like decide whether you want to continue with this commitment, non-commitment, or you want to let it go.
Okay, what about, because many a times I've heard this advice coming from the elders, especially when now there's a child out of relationship or out of wedlock, right? Where you know full well you're a woman and your man has now had a child outside of your relationship, and that child will always be a reminder of the pain, because at sometimes you are betrayed, but there isn't a reminder of the event, right? Now there is a reminder. Would you give her advice that she needs to find a way, if she stays, she's gonna have to find a way to love that child, because that is now her man's child?
How did she find out about the child? Was it through somebody else, or was the man decent enough to come down and sit her down to say, look, I made a mistake. This is what I did. It shouldn't have happened, and I won't do it again. Because sometimes we tend to give relationship solutions, and unfortunately, they always lead to leave. But it's not always the case. Like, let's find out more about, like, how did you find out? Did the man come to you and say, look, I made a mistake, I made another woman pregnant? I'd be more willing to sit down and say, okay, how do we fix this now that it's happened? Versus saying, okay, I'm going to leave. Oh, you're not the type of man that I want to be with. Maybe beyond the mistake that he did today, or with the pregnancy, he's a great man. How do we know that?
Because not once did she say, I don't love him, ne? Any longer. Oh, okay, so we've got another voice note. Equally as deep. Let's hear it.
Afternoon, Anele. I would like to know if it's a good idea to date someone who just lost a wife in less than 4 months. Is it a good idea?
Something tells me it's even less than 4 months, because it went from 10, then it went to 4. Okay. All right. So either way, your question is, a man lost his wife, and is it a good idea to be dating him? I don't think. Do time frames matter when it comes to that? Because we're speaking about time frames. We're all like blasé about them. Do they apply this time?
Okay. So once again, it boils down to the individual. If he lost his wife, how did he lose his wife? Was he prepared for it over time? Was it a gradual process?
Was it a car accident and then she was gone?
Was it sudden? So things like that need to be taken into consideration. I think a lot of the times when we hear these questions, we don't have a lot of context, so we can't really give quality answers. But as far as the dating aspect of it, if we're talking dating, I really don't see a problem if he feels that he wants to start seeing someone else as part of his process. The question I would have, though, is what is the caller's definition of dating? Because I've noticed that for some people, dating is going to the movies, hanging out every now and then, and for others, it's like it's a full-blown relationship.
We are exclusive.
We're exclusive.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I think that to think that this person is ready to be exclusive after 4 months is pushing it a little bit, unless of course you were with this person during the course of his marriage, and it's really hard to say. But
and now you just got a promotion.
And not or hoping, lobbying for the position.
Magavelo, your take?
Look, men deal with things differently, unfortunately, and women tend to process, for example, breakups much quicker, right? Because they cry for the first 3 months or whatever, and then, but guys tend to be in denial a lot, a bit longer. So he'd only start grieving probably a year from now, actually. So he hasn't started grieving yet. So maybe what he needs now is a friend, support, or even just something physical to get rid of. That's his way of mourning. Maybe that's his way. So find out what is it that he wants at this time, and let him be genuine and accept the answer. Don't question it, but also don't debate about it. That's what he needs. If he says, I only need a woman to just be here for me, then just make that choice. Do I want to be here? But find out what is it that he needs at this present moment. You'll find out that it's not a relationship, my darling.
Wow. Okay, so you are basically saying, find out what his expectations are and also know what your expectations are as well. If you're looking for a boyfriend who's going to become your husband, this may not be the place you're going to find it.
Not now.
This may not be the place you're going to find it.
Not now.
Look out for your heart there. All right, there you have it. Remember, don't confuse being alone with loneliness. That's exactly what we're saying. Your tweets, your Facebook messages, and voice notes are coming in fast and furious. Kofi, Makavelo, and Gerry will try answer as many as possible in the last segment. So they're leaving now, but they're not going away. So keep your questions coming. I think we're learning a lot here. You might think your situation is totally hopeless and you'll never find love or be lovable again. Well, after the break, I want you to hear Stacey Lewis's story and then reconsider. Okay? Welcome back to Real Talk with me, Anele. We're talking about relationships, how to move on after a failed relationship. Can we even call it a failed relationship, huh? How and where do you find love again? Stacey Lewis went through it all. She's been there, done that, got the t-shirt and the accessories. She shares her story every chance she gets because she is passionate about empowering others and inspiring people to believe that divorce does not have to be the end of you. She's the founder of The Divorce Source and the author of Divorce 101, Survive and Thrive. Welcome, Stacey Lewis.
Thanks, Anele.
Your name was always made to be an author one, so clearly this divorce thing helped us out here.
Well, I needed the name change, exactly.
Oh,
you
is
see.
Lewis Maiden?
No, Lewis is second marriage. You know, my voicemail actually said, if you're looking for Stacey's idol, Stacey is, or Stacey Lewis, you've reached the right place.
At least you've got a sense of humor about it. But I can imagine when your child was 3 years old and the other one was, 22 months?
And the other one, 8 months.
8 months. And your husband comes home from an overseas trip and he says, darling, I'm leaving you. What goes through your mind?
I don't know if much went through my mind. I literally, I collapsed to the ground in absolute panic and horror and shock. I really, that was not what I was expecting.
So you honestly did not pick up any vibes from him?
No. We had a moment when I was pregnant with my third. I was 28 weeks pregnant. We went on a baby moon and he said to me, it's not marriage material. And anyway, he went to therapist, said it's an early midlife crisis. We dealt with it. And from that point until the day I call Hiroshima, I really thought we were good.
Is he a good liar or were you blind?
I think that now, with hindsight, I really do believe that a relationship is as happy as the unhappiest party in the relationship. So I think I must have been sleeping. I really do. I have to own that, because if I had no inkling that this was going to happen, clearly I wasn't awake.
So when he says he wants a divorce, obviously you said you were on the floor, but now you have to get up and you have to put your big old panties on. What are you doing? Are you begging? Are you bargaining? Are you trying to fix it? And how quickly do you accept?
I didn't accept for a long time. So the first thing is I absolutely begged, pleaded, can we go for therapy? Can we do something? And he did consent briefly, not that day, but perhaps about a week later, to try again, which lasted about a week. But I would have done anything. He could have told me, you can stand on your head. I would have stood on my head. Acceptance for me took a very, very long time. I didn't want to accept this reality. I really didn't. And I tortured myself with all these thoughts of why did it happen? Where did it go wrong?
What did I do
But
wrong?
I think he, of course, what did I do wrong?
Should
but
I
he
be more
must
this?
love me, you know, he must. I saw that twinkle in his eyes. This can't be. I didn't want to accept this reality, and it took me a really long, long time to be able to accept that.
Do you find that you would relapse in your road to recovery when you found him being nice to you? Because obviously you're the mother of his children, so there is a certain level of, you know, him being cordial that's going to happen. If you're sick, he's going to worry that you're sick because you're taking care of his children. Were there those moments when you're like, but wait, why would he care if I had my vitamin C today? You know, if he doesn't love me, let's try this thing.
Look, for me, it was very clear that he was very clear that it was over. So there was no opportunity for me even to play these mind games in myself that maybe there was a chance. There was no chance, which in hindsight, I think was kind to me, because then you don't have to play those games.
Yeah.
But I still didn't want to accept.
So what was the one step that pushed you towards acceptance?
So I had a friend, a good friend. So afterwards I became very, very depressed. I was anorexic, I was passively suicidal, used to pray at night that God would take me in my sleep. And I weighed 38 kilograms and landed up in hospital once or twice, and I had been crying constantly. And my friend was sitting on the foot of my bed, and she said to me, when are you going to choose happiness? And I thought, I'm not going to say the word, right?
But I hear what you thought.
You have got 3 children, you've got a husband, what the hell do you know? You're asking me, when am I going to choose happiness? And she said to me, if you don't choose happiness and you don't choose to move on from this, you are going to be here in 4 years' time, and you are going to be sick of your story. And she was right.
Wow.
And really for me, that was a pivotal moment, because I realized that I could tell myself and the world and whoever my story forever, and I could be stuck. Or I could make a decision. Happiness doesn't mean choosing happiness tomorrow, you know? No. Choosing happiness means choosing to move on. Choosing happiness means taking active steps towards recovery. So that for me really was a defining moment.
Did you have to ask yourself some tough questions like, you know, did I validate myself through marriage? Was my worth the fact that I was somebody's wife? Did you have to ask yourself, like, how much of my ego is speaking as opposed to my real feelings?
So not so much ego for me, but I really found that I defined myself by my roles.
Yeah.
So I'm a physiotherapist by profession. So it was Stacey the physio, or Stacey the wife, or Stacey the mother. And what I found really hard, and I remember this so clearly, on my first weekend without my kids, I wasn't a physio because I wasn't working. I wasn't a wife because I didn't have a husband, and I wasn't a mom. And the scariest thing for me was, who am I? Yeah.
And who did you find out?
I found out that I'm quite a good gal, you know. I really learned to love myself, and I discovered so many things about myself. I mean, I landed up running a 21-kilometer race. I think it was 2011 when I don't think I could walk 2 kilometers.
Yeah.
I discovered new things about myself, new talents within myself. I did things that I never tried before because I actually never explored who I was outside of my roles.
So then the book, when did this idea come to you?
So what happened is, after I actually recovered, and I can't tell you I recovered on the 24th of January, whenever, do you know what I'm saying? But when I started feeling better, I started informally helping women. Particularly women, I say, because I am one, so I have more to offer, because that's my experience, right? So I started helping women informally, and then this book was released on, I think, the 21st of September last year. A year before that, I started a website, The Divorce Source. So that's when I formalized it. But the book happened by magic. I had written a children's book, and I went to see a publisher, and she said to me, it's wonderful and everything, but there's no market. So if you come to me with a book on divorce, I'll publish it.
Okay.
And that's what happened.
Did your friend who was sitting at the bottom of the bed, did she write the foreword?
She didn't.
Oh, yeah, Flopile is this. I mean, come on.
My bad.
Oh,
Bad
who wrote the
move.
foreword?
I don't think I've got a foreword. Have I?
Check.
You know, it
He's
was a
got
long time ago. You must know. Now, I've got 4 children now. I mean, I don't want to spoil the end of the story, but you know what happens to your brain.
I mean, it would have been such a nice... I think you wrote the forward. Look at you loving
Did
yourself. I like
How's that, hey? You go.
High five. Okay, you are not alone. The one thing I liked in here, when I was looking at it, was you break down the process of how to tell the children that there is a divorce happening. We're about to say goodbye to you, but I mean, for me, that's always the reason people stay in unhappy marriages is for the kids. A, that doesn't help the kids. B, what is the first step towards telling the kids that you guys are splitting?
Well, it really depends on the children's age. In fact, I had a psychologist write on that. It depends on their age, how much information you give them.
Yeah.
But should you give them a blow for blow, you know, and he ran off with, I don't know, whoever.
And came back with my sister.
No, it's about mommy and daddy are getting divorced. But really, you'll have to read the book for it. It really is so age specific.
Yeah.
And it really, you shouldn't give them all the gory details. They need to know that there's going to be a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
They need to know mom and dad are getting divorced. We're not going to be living together.
Yeah.
But as for
you
the
will be loved.
nitty-gritty, absolutely. And that's what you've got to focus on.
Yeah.
That's the main thing.
Stacey Lewis, I don't think this is going to be your last book that you write, by the way.
Definitely, I'm busy with the next one.
There's a lot happening in this, so she's going to be back here. Thank you so much to Stacey for inspiring people. Your truth, if you want to find the light at the end of the tunnel, rather, visit the Divorce Source or get the copy of this book, Divorce 101, Survive and Thrive. It's Q&A time with our relationship coaches after this. Welcome back to the last segment of Real Talk this Thursday. Back on the couch, Kofi Ofori-Boateng, Harry Pretorius, as well as Makabele Mutaung, and they're here to answer your questions. I'm speaking fast because I want to get through so many of them. Dominique Mukatle from Twitter. Harry, this is going to come to you. How do I mourn her death when we were not married and her family never knew me? I felt so lonely and sad at the funeral without anyone to share my memories with.
Shame. So this poor lady, she weren't married. Is that what you
They
said?
weren't married and then she died.
And so is it the wife died or the
No,
girlfriend
so they
died?
were dating, right?
They were dating.
And then she died. But because they had now never met the family, because, you know, in some cultures you can only introduce people when you are
So now she's
married.
like excluded. She doesn't have somebody to talk to. There's no room. And obviously that's why we have platforms for people to try and start talking about things, to be able to relate their feelings, to talk about it. So if you find yourself in a place where you are alone, isolated, don't know, no family members, don't know who to speak to, pick up the phone, ask a family member or somebody, do you know of anybody that I can go and speak to, a pastor, a coach, a counselor, somebody that you can go and confide in.
Would you suggest he approaches the family and say, I was their friend and I think could we find healing in each other?
You know, I think the viewers have also picked this up, that throughout the conversation, one thing that's been very obvious is a very strong social leaning when it comes to grief and relationships. And we're always concerned about what people think, how people feel about it. Can I approach this person? Can I approach that person? Grief is a very personal thing. So if for him to get closure, he feels he needs to go talk to the parents, there's no guarantee that they're going to accept him or they're going to even recognize him. But at least he would have done something to ease that pain somewhat and bring him at least one step closer to closure and healing.
Okay. Voice note time. Makabele, you're going to take this for us?
Hello, Mrs. Anele. This is Palisa from Soshanguve. Well, today, my boyfriend just sent me a text saying that he can't see me no more, so I must just forget about him, and he blocked me. I don't even know what happened. I don't understand what went wrong or what's going on, so I don't know how to take this. I need help, please.
Well, first things first, he didn't wake up this morning and decide on that text. He's been thinking about it for a while.
Look, just don't personalize it because it's his decision. Let him be. When he's ready to tell you why, he'll tell you. But for now, don't go out seeking answers. It's clear that if he was man enough and he wanted to tell you, he would have set you down and said, look, I'm leaving you because of 1, 2, 3. So unfortunately, a lot of men, or a lot of boys, in this case, he's acting like a boy, don't want to give closure because they don't know when they're going to need you back. And... You know,
and the church said hallelujah.
So just block him back, honey. Go get wine, just move on, and when he's ready, he'll come back and tell you. But for now, don't do anything. It's not your business. It's his place. He knows why he's doing it. It's got nothing to do with you.
Nice. I
You
actually
like
I like you. I like you. Okay, next one.
Hi Anele, I just want to know how do I overcome or deal with the situation. I went testing and found out that I was HIV positive, and I think and I know that my spouse is the one who infected me because he's been cheating constantly and I've been warning him about it. So I feel I just need to leave the relationship, or what should I do?
When you test, the first thing you do when you get your results is you get counseling. So legally, you're supposed to get counseling. So clearly you've gone through that, and now you're looking for answers about your heart. What must she do about her heart?
You know, Stacey said something very powerful when she was up here. She talked about when her marriage came to an end, she started asking herself some very difficult questions about who am I? Identity. And Makabela also made mention of this earlier, where she was talking about when two people come together and they form an identity.
Yeah.
Now, the tragedy in a lot of relationships is people think that they have to merge, like you said earlier, morph into one identity.
Yeah.
You are two souls, you're two people. And the more you compromise who you are, the more risk you put yourself in. So now...
That risk has caused this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, she compromised, because she did say that she had known that he was cheating for a while.
And she had been warning him.
And she'd been warning him for a while. She shouldn't have been warning him, she should have been warning herself. That's the reality of the matter. So now that she's in this situation, what this is, and I'm trying to say this with as much empathy as I possibly can, she needs to now start thinking about herself, because he has not been thinking for her.
He's been thinking about him.
He's been thinking about himself
Yeah.
and his pleasure. This is where I usually start having to be a little hard on the guys. When you bring a woman into your life, you're supposed to act with leadership, and act with responsibility, and act with accountability. Your body is no longer your body alone. You're sharing it with this individual. The moment you take what should be hers, what you've said is hers, and give it to someone else, not only are you exposing her to danger, you're taking a sacred part of what she believes is hers and giving it to someone else as well. You're betraying her as well. So, you know, like, there's so many levels of betrayal in this thing, and this is where she needs to stop and, you know, reassess and say, this is my identity, this is who I am, I was before this person came into my life, this is who I need to return to, because her identity hasn't changed.
Yeah.
She can go back to that and now start operating from a place of power. That's what she needs to do now.
Your status does not change your identity. Harry, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, what I can say in these kind of situations, it's obviously you need to understand the situation, but it is a no-no. That, like Kofi said himself, is that guy thought about himself. He was selfish, didn't think about it. He wasn't committed to a certain degree. Obviously, you don't know. Obviously, you need to understand. You need to, in these kind of sessions, when we have sessions, obviously, she needs to look at herself. He needs to be open and honest with her as well, so that she can move on as well. And then she needs to look at herself and say, "Now what? I don't want this, or do I want this?" She needs to be honest with herself, because that is just a road, a path to distraction. He never thought about her, or he wasn't thinking about it. He just thought about himself. He just selfish.
Magabela, you said something earlier that we always run towards leave. In this situation, I mean, are we not screaming leave when he has infected you with HIV? Or can we still find a way, dependent on what he is saying to you?
So, depending on the value that he brings to the relationship and to you personally, you would. It's a personal choice. I don't want to almost give people the solution of leaving all the time without finding out exactly why they're leaving, because you'll face the same situation wherever you're going again.
Okay.
So just. People have made it work before. I'm sure there's plenty of people that have been in the same situation. If you want to get help from somebody with that experience, because sometimes I assume for her, you'd want to talk to somebody who's going through what you're going through, because me talking about it and I'm negative, it's not going to help, you know.
Because you're not in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So speak to a couple that has been through it, because clearly when a couple has been through it, it means one was guilty of bringing it, and how do they make it work, if that's what you want. But if you don't, then find somebody to help you as an individual and deal with it.
But I think I need to highlight something that you just said. when you're leaving a relationship, you need to know why you're leaving the relationship. Otherwise, you're gonna find the same
You're
one.
going back to the same
You're
thing.
gonna. It's not gonna present
The
itself
cycle.
in the same body, in the same height, in the same weight, but it's gonna be the same relationship. Whew, guys, listen. Thank you, Harry. Thank you for your time. Makabelo, thank you for your time. Kofi, thank you for your time. This has been a real talk, okay? Thank you so much to the wonderful guests. A big thank you as well to Stacey Lewis. Make sure you go and get her book. Hopefully it helped you figure out some tough decisions that you are facing. Endings in relationships are never easy, and it can feel like you are shattered, literally. The positive side, what can you learn about yourself? What tough questions are you asking yourself? So cheers to strength, to picking up the pieces and moving on. Who knows, the love of your life could be yourself, and then the person you're going to spend your life with around the corner. On Real Talk tomorrow, we've got Vusi Tembagwayo as well as Caesar Mpofu Walsh. They'll be in the building. Make sure you tune in at 5 p.m. right here on SABC3. Goodbye.